Don't glare at him like that, my brother's wife said, smirking. He's just a kid. He's learning from his elders. Then her son, 8 years old, face sticky with dessert, leaned across the table, spat into my plate, and whispered, "Mom says you deserve it." The sound of laughter swallowed the room. Dad chuckled. Mom shook her head but said nothing. I just stared at the slow swirl of spit melting into my mashed potatoes. The clink of silverware kept rhythm with my heartbeat. Hi everyone, my name is Amber Lee, I'm 29, and that was the last family dinner I ever attended. Because that night, they didn't just humiliate me, they erased me. Have you ever realized, mid-smile, that every chair around you was a throne built from your silence? The roast on the table smelled like old smoke and butter. My brother raised his glass. To family who knows their place, he said. They all laughed again. I placed my fork down carefully, like if I moved too fast, the floor would give way, and stood. Leaving so soon? Mom asked. Yeah, I said softly. Dinner's over. But what I really meant was the illusion is over. Outside, the rain had begun, soft, mocking, the kind that soaks you without thunder. My reflection in the window looked calm, but my palms burned. Inside, through the glass, I saw them still eating, still laughing. I used to think family wounds were invisible, but that night, they had faces, names, and forks. By midnight, I stared at my phone. A message blinked from Dad. Don't contact us again. 1 minute later, my brother reacted with a single smiley face emoji. I read it twice. Then I typed. Understood. Mortgage autopay ends tomorrow. I hit send. For 3 full seconds, nothing happened. Then the group chat erupted, name after name lighting up like a fire I'd finally stopped putting out. Outside, thunder finally arrived, late, but loyal. And for the first time in years, I felt peace sneak in with the storm. The storm outside howled like it had waited years to speak. My phone kept buzzing, message after message lighting up the dark room. What do you mean by that, Amber? You can't just stop the payments. Dad says this isn't funny. I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling slightly, not from guilt, but from clarity. For 7 years, I'd been paying their mortgage quietly, ever since Dad had called crying about the bank letters. You're the only responsible one, sweetheart, he'd said. Your brother's struggling with kids, don't tell him. So I didn't. I just paid. Every month. $1,300 auto-deducted from my account to theirs. And in return, I got a front row seat to my own humiliation every family gathering. Tonight, though, I realized something simple. When you stop financing your disrespect, it suddenly becomes a crisis. The phone buzzed again. Amber, call me now. Dad. You're being dramatic. Mom. You really think you can blackmail us with money? My brother. I smiled faintly at that one. I typed. Not blackmail. Boundaries. And then, for the first time ever, I left the group chat. The silence afterward wasn't empty, it was clean. Like air after a storm. I poured myself tea and sat by the window, watching streetlights smear through rain. Somewhere deep inside, a younger version of me whispered, they'll never understand you, stop waiting for them to try. The next morning, my inbox was flooded with transfer requests, calls from unknown numbers, even a concerned cousin trying to mediate. But I'd already made a decision. I wasn't just ending the payments, I was ending the illusion that I was the family's safety net. I logged into the bank app, cancelled the autopay, and transferred every remaining cent of my emergency fund into a new account under my own name. By noon, the house loan bounced. And by 12:05, my father called again, this time using my brother's phone. I answered. Calmly. Amber, he said, voice trembling, you've made a huge mistake. I looked at the sky outside and whispered, finally, we agree on something. By the next morning, the entire family group chat had turned into a war zone. Screenshots. Voice notes. Half-truths dressed as concern. She's ungrateful after everything we've done. She's trying to punish us financially. What will the neighbors say when the bank shows up? I didn't reply. I didn't have to. Because what they didn't know was that the mortgage wasn't just in their name, it was under the trust I'd quietly created when I helped them refinance. A trust that I legally controlled. I remembered that day like a film reel. Dad sitting across from me at the bank, pen shaking as he signed the paperwork. "You're saving us, Amber," he'd said, wiping his eyes. No, I thought then, I was saving the house. Because part of me already knew, they'd never save me. That morning, I opened the trust portal. The account name blinked on the screen. Lee Family Estate, Primary Trustee, Amber Lee. I stared at it for a long time. Not out of pride, but disbelief at how far silence had carried me. The first call came from Mom. Her voice was sugar-coated panic. "Sweetheart, you know we didn't mean any of that. Your brother just has a temper." "His son spit in my food," I said evenly. "And you laughed." There was silence. Then, "Children make mistakes." "So do parents," I whispered, and ended the call. 5 minutes later, a new message arrived, from my brother. "If the house gets taken, that's on you." I typed one sentence and hit send. "Then I guess it's time to pack." By noon, I got an email from the mortgage company confirming, auto draft cancelled, property reassignment initiated. I leaned back, tea in hand, the rain outside now replaced by sunlight slicing through clouds. It felt poetic, like the universe itself had drawn a line between what I gave and what I allowed. They wanted to teach me my place. They were about to learn theirs. By sunset, my phone was vibrating non-stop. Missed calls from Mom. From Dad. Even from Pastor Neil, who once told me to forgive and forget. Now his voicemail said, "Amber, your family's in trouble. They could lose the house. Please reconsider." Trouble. The word rolled through my mind like a slow echo. They hadn't cared when I was the one drowning. I opened Facebook, and there it was. My brother's post. "Some people turn their back on family when money's involved. Sad world." The comments section was a funeral of hypocrisy. "Aunt Marla, stay strong, sweetie. Mom's best friend, she'll come around. Blood is thicker than pride." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because silence, I'd learned, echoes louder than defense. At 7:11 p.m., my brother called. His voice was sharp. "You think this is funny? The kids are scared. Mom hasn't stopped crying." I looked at my laptop. The trust documents glowed faintly on the screen. "You should have thought about that before you taught your son to humiliate me." He exhaled hard. "You're ruining this family." "No," I said softly. "You already did. I'm just canceling the subscription." For a moment, I thought he'd hang up. But instead, he whispered, "You'll regret this." And then the line went dead. I sat there, heart steady. Because deep down, I wasn't angry anymore, I was awake. 2 hours later, a message pinged from the mortgage officer. "Due to ownership clarification, the Lee residence will be temporarily frozen for reassessment. No party may modify or sell until verification is complete." I smiled. That meant, no one could touch a cent of it. Not until the truth was sorted. The next morning, a neighbor texted me. "Your brother's moving furniture out. Looks messy." I stood by the window, sunlight brushing across my face. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for staying silent. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding the deed. By Monday morning, they brought their chaos straight to my office. I was in the middle of a meeting when my assistant whispered, "There's a man downstairs, says he's your brother." I froze for a second. Then I said calmly, "Tell him I'm in a meeting. Indefinitely." But 2 minutes later, the glass door swung open. He stood there, face flushed, eyes wild, holding a stack of papers. "You think you can embarrass us like this?" he shouted. The entire team went silent. My boss looked at me, uncertain. I stood slowly, straightened my blazer, and said, "Security will walk you out." He slammed the papers on the table, foreclosure warnings, debt letters, screenshots of my text. "You're heartless," he hissed. I met his eyes. "You're right. Heartless doesn't pay your bills anymore." 2 guards escorted him out while his voice echoed through the hallway. "You'll regret this, Amber. You'll regret this." When the door finally shut, my boss cleared his throat. "You okay?" I smiled faintly. "I am now." That afternoon, I sat in the break room alone, staring at the rain-streaked window. 4 years, I'd carried their crises on my back, quietly fixing everything while they laughed at my mistakes. But that day, watching him dragged out of my office, I realized something. Peace looks like boundaries enforced in public. By evening, Mom texted again. You've humiliated us enough. Come to dinner tonight, let's talk like adults. I stared at her message for a long minute, then replied. Adults don't spit in plates, Mom. No reply came back. Later that night, as I drove home, the streetlights blurred through the windshield like streaks of gold. The house I rented, small, quiet, my own, felt warmer than the mansion I once saved. As I brewed tea, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was from the mortgage officer. Ms. Lee, documents finalized. Legal ownership officially transferred, solely to you. I set the phone down and laughed, a quiet, trembling sound I hadn't heard in years. The invitation arrived 3 days later. Gold embossed, like nothing had happened. Family dinner, Sunday 6 p.m. Let's talk like before. Mom's handwriting, shaky but deliberate. I almost ignored it. But something inside me, maybe closure, maybe curiosity, whispered, go. So that Sunday, I drove to the same house I'd once helped save. Only now, it wasn't their house. It was mine. The driveway was crowded, my brother's SUV, Dad's old sedan, laughter leaking through the open window. When I stepped inside, everything stopped. Mom froze mid-step. Dad's smile fell. My brother looked like he'd seen a ghost. You came, Mom said softly. I own the place, I replied. We Saturday. No one touched the food. The tension was thick, brittle, like glass about to break. Dad finally spoke. You can't keep it, Amber. It's not right. I looked at him. I paid every bill for 7 years. You told me to stay quiet when they mocked me. And now that silence has a title deed. My brother slammed his fist on the table. You tricked us. No, I said, voice calm, almost kind. I just read the fine print you never cared to. The room fell into stunned quiet. Even his son, the boy who once spit in my plate, stared at me, confused. I stood, sliding a folder across the table. These are the documents. The house is legally mine. But don't panic, I'm not throwing anyone out tonight. Dad's eyes softened. Then what are you going to do? I smiled faintly. Sell it. Mom gasped. My brother's jaw tightened. You wouldn't, he whispered. I nodded slowly. The offer's already accepted. The buyers move in next month. The silence that followed wasn't anger, it was realization. For the first time, they understood I was no longer the daughter who begged for a seat at their table. I was the woman who now owned the table, and could sell it if she pleased. Mom's fork clattered against the plate. You can't just sell our home like it's your home. I interrupted gently. It was never yours, Mom. You just lived here while I paid for the roof. Dad's face turned pale. Where will we go? I looked at him for a long, quiet moment, not out of cruelty, but truth. Where I went when you told me not to contact you again. My brother's voice cracked. You're doing this for revenge. I shook my head. No. I'm doing this for closure. You mistook my silence for weakness, and I let you, because peace was more important than pride. But peace doesn't mean servitude. He leaned forward, veins visible on his forehead. So what now? You kick us out and move in here alone. I smiled faintly. No. I sold it to a young family who just had a baby. They'll fill these walls with laughter that doesn't sting. For a moment, no one spoke. The air in the room shifted, heavy, ashamed, raw. Mom's eyes watered. After everything we did for you. I exhaled slowly. You raised me. I'm grateful. But you also taught me my worth was conditional. Every favor came with a price tag. I opened my purse and placed 3 envelopes on the table, one for each of them. Here, I said. Your share of the sale. Fair split after the mortgage balance. My brother grabbed his. What's this for? For freedom, I said softly. Dad looked up, voice trembling. Amber, where will you go? I smiled faintly. Home. They didn't understand that home wasn't a place anymore. It was a version of me that finally stopped begging to belong. As I walked to the door, the boy, my nephew, tugged my sleeve. His voice was small. Aunt Amber. Mom said you hate us. I knelt, looking him in the eyes. No, honey. I just stopped letting people hurt me. He nodded, silent, confused but listening. Maybe the cycle could still break. The moving trucks pulled away at dawn. I stood by the gate, watching strangers carry boxes through what used to be our front door, now theirs. The house looked smaller somehow, like the years of tension had been scrubbed out with the furniture. I didn't feel guilt. Just relief. The sale went through cleanly. After taxes and legal adjustments, my share came to $148,000. It wasn't just money, it was closure given a number. That afternoon, I drove 3 hours north, past the city skyline and into a coastal town where no one knew my last name. The ocean looked like liquid silver, endless and kind. I rented a small cafe space by the pier, the kind of place that smelled like espresso, vanilla, and new beginnings. When the lawyer called to confirm the last transfer, he asked if I wanted to rename the trust. Yes, I said. Rename it Peace and Coffee. He laughed softly. That's poetic. It's honest, I replied. A week later, I opened the cafe. People came and went, tourists, locals, quiet souls who liked to read by the window. I didn't tell them my story. I didn't need to. Every cup I poured was a silent rebellion against the girl who once waited for permission to exist. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, my phone buzzed. A message from Dad. We're moving in with your aunt. Hope you're okay. Take care. I typed back. I am. I truly am. Then I set the phone down and watched the waves crash in rhythmic silence. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's the sound of peace pouring into a cup, one slow breath at a time. The boy's face, my nephew's, still lingered in memory, soft and unsure. Maybe one day he'd visit, order a latte, and understand what strength really looked like. Until then, I'd keep building a life where no one spit in my plate, because I finally learned how to serve myself first.